everybody wants to change. They just don't want to do anything differently. Only 2% of the users are going to actually click through it. And only 2% of the 2% who click through it are even going to read what it says. The biggest thing that limits you is your imagination of what you could potentially do with it.
Todd, welcome to the show. Welcome to Product Growth Stories. So today we're going to talk about your experience building Brainstorm, which can you give us a little heads up? Like, what is Brainstorm? What is this business that you built?
Yeah. Brainstorm is a software adoption software. We like to sometimes say we're the SaaS platform made for SaaS adoption because one of the things that is really challenging for any tech entrepreneur, anybody who's trying to start up a business, is not only do I first have to build a really good product and then I have to sell that product, but then I got to get my customer to actually use that product. And so Brainstorm, we've now been around for 5+ years, and exciting to see it continue to develop and grow and change. But yeah, basically it is a platform designed to help enterprises change their behavior at scale. So,
oh man, I cannot wait to talk to you about this because, everybody, especially in the tech space, like us nerds, often think that there's a technical solution to whatever problem that we see. Like, oh, we'll just insert this workflow. And then the problem I see is at the end of the day, there's a human being that has to somehow do something differently. Otherwise, it doesn't matter, right? And so how do you, at scale, like for an enterprise, do this behavior change? Like, how's it work? What's the secret?
Yeah, well, I think that's actually one of the funny things that we oftentimes forget is if you are building a technology, we tend to think of the technology as the end all be all. And ultimately, the end goal is not to just sell a technology. It's to help a human on the other end be more successful. And every single company in the world has people who are looking to get some sort of an outcome out of the technology that they get. The problem is, even if I believe the software is potentially valuable and good, change is not an easy process. One of the phrases I always like to say, right, is everybody wants to change. They just don't want to do anything differently. And so what you end up with is this problem where you have a user who may or may not be motivated, may or may not know that your software exists, may or may not have any idea of how to use that software. And ultimately, you have to figure out how to change it. We started our business primarily focused on one customer, and that was Microsoft. So Microsoft obviously is one of the largest SaaS companies in the entire world. And when they first started moving over to the SaaS world, it was a really big problem because Microsoft sold all of their technology every 3 years, and they would just have a seller come in and resell you every 3 years on the new version. Like, oh man, you remember Outlook 2007? Yeah. It's so cool. Don't you want Outlook 2010?
It's got mail merge.
Exactly. It's got mail merge now. Isn't that amazing? We added this quick parts feature. You can add your signature, right? And so they always had some new thing that they were trying to sell you. Well, when they switched over to now say it's a monthly subscription, it costs $35 a month, and it's going to have a whole bunch of stuff that you're probably never going to use. That was a really, really difficult process. And so we basically cut our teeth learning how to help really large enterprises shift from a traditional on-prem software purchasing model to buying SaaS.
Yeah. And there's so many things that change in there. I mean, just off the top of my head, the first thing that comes to mind is the way the user evaluates, like the time frame upon which they evaluate your success, right? So if you're selling a 3-year contract, your churn is really good. It's at least 3 years, right? And then if you go to monthly, they see the bill every month. It's more obvious and visible, just for people to start seeing, like, did I need this month? That's just one element. And there's so many more about more people being involved in the buying cycle when it's kind of split off into sub elements like this. Where do you, what are the things that make the biggest impact for getting adoption given all these changes that happened?
Well, okay. So that's a really good question. I don't know if I can answer it really, really succinctly, but I'm going to do my best.
Yes.
Because obviously
let's try.
Change is a pretty complicated discipline. There's all kinds of psychology and neuroscience and design and that all influence what I would say is kind of the special sauce of change. But usually the first place that is a big problem is, I would say, a lot of people fail to realize that you can't just start by saying, here's how the tool works. Most of the time we jump immediately into, here are all the features, here are all the buttons, here are all the settings, here's how you configure it. But you haven't brought me along as the end user. to actually buy into it. So the first step in any change process is I have to have already started to contemplate that there could be value here for me.
Mm-hmm.
So if
Wait, it sounds like, just to jump in, that sounds like the first step is intimately connected to sales. It's a different kind of sales-ish motion about.
Well, okay,
selling.
I think that's right. But what I'm saying is we oftentimes we probably go in and we sell the person who is the decision maker who has to purchase the software.
Mm-hmm.
But usually the person who buys the software isn't ultimately the end user, and that end user never goes through a sales process. And that's the problem. We assume just because some executive got really excited about some sales rep's awesome demo, and then they spend all this money to buy it, that the end user is going to also buy in. But if they have something thrust upon them and they have a system that they feel comfortable with and they think is working, and you don't take the time to sell that end user, it doesn't really matter. So yes, I do think it's a sales problem, but it's a post-sales sales problem, meaning we don't sell the end user, and we have to, or we're going to fail, because they don't care about you. They don't know you. They didn't buy you. And all you're really doing is disrupting their life. So if you can take that into account, then you actually have to start thinking, how do I get the end user who is not the buyer, who is not the champion? How do I get them bought in? How do I get them excited? And that is a marketing and sales problem that happens independent of actually signing a deal.
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah, I can definitely see that. And that's even sometimes a software, going slightly off topic. It's even a problem with designing software, because you need it to be bought, and potentially that person will never use it. And that what they want is not exactly always totally aligning.
Yeah, it's actually, that's a great point. That's actually the biggest problem with the SaaS world is people buy software anticipating they're going to get some sort of value out of it. But in order for that value to be achieved, people have to change their behavior. And that generally doesn't happen just magically, right? Like you have a life. Even if you were interested and want to do something differently, it's not an easy process. So first step is drive awareness, get them excited. Then you got to get them to actually want to do it. And only then, once you've taught them why and they believe in the why, then you can start talking about the how. But we jump usually way too far down the road, and we're trying to teach them how something works, and they're not actually bought in yet.
Yes. Oh man, I'm having flashbacks of trying to teach people to do stuff they don't want to do. It doesn't work that well. Yeah. So this is like a massive internal post-sale marketing problem, is one part that you talked about. Are there other elements beyond that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the biggest problems, I think, is I would say that it depends on how you sell, right? And so one of the things that we've learned now, having to work, we started stupidly probably with the largest, most complicated, like behemoth customer that
it's a good customer though. On the other hand,
Microsoft. We built most of the business initially only serving Microsoft, and now we work with lots of other software vendors and help them build out their own enablement and adoption strategies internally. But if you think about Microsoft, just as a great example, I mean, most of the customers that really struggle and are the most dangerous for a company like Microsoft are customers that are spending 7+ figures on a deal, right? Microsoft has thousands of customers that are spending 7 or 8 figures on Microsoft every single year. And so those really large enterprise customers who are spending tons and tons and tons of money with you, those are the ones that are most at risk when you move them over into a SaaS model, because again, they're going to downsell and downsell and downsell and downsell until you're at nothing. And so that's where we first started. But then you also have this massive partner ecosystem. They sell hundreds of millions of dollars through partner channels every single year, billions through the partner channel. And so
this is like part of the SaaS scaling end game for enterprises, right? Is at some point you want to just have partner deals and you don't even need to acquire customers anymore, which solves this massive CAC problem.
Yeah, exactly. But the biggest challenge that most people who sell through the channel run into is now you're a step removed from your customer. So you already had a hard time. You might have a customer success manager who you apply and you send in and say, hey, we're going to help train you. We're going to give you all these enablement resources. We're going to do all this great stuff. Maybe in the case of we're going to introduce Brainstorm because they'll pull us in to support the customer directly with some sort of change initiative. So that happens a lot. But in the partner world, what do you do if you now have the partner who's being asked to do that same thing? Every single partner is going to have a completely different approach. They're going to provide a different level of service. They're going to provide a different level of support. And so each customer gets a very inconsistent experience when you start selling through the channel. So that's another big area of emphasis for us is like, okay, so not only do we need to figure out how to support your enterprise clients, but then when you get down into the scale motion, you need to start figuring out, okay, now I've got channel and partners who are selling me. How do I support those clients? And then I may also have a bunch of PLG customers who are just coming to my website and buying much smaller deals. How do they get support? And so you end up with this really complex ecosystem, and the needs of each of those audiences end up being a little bit different. And knowing
Yeah.
how to support each of those audiences is also really important. So I would say like one of the other big major problems is like, well, the solving the problem for enterprise is really, really hard, but like we know how to do it. But a
Yeah.
lot of customers, it's a completely different kind of hard to then figure out how to support a bunch of really small customers at the same time.
Right. Different resources to spend on each one. Well, I think you've done a fantastic job of highlighting like the contours of this problem space that you are operating in. And I'm curious, like at a high level, obviously you can't tell everyone how to fix it and have it work in, 10 minutes in the podcast, right? But at a high level, like what are your 1, 2, 3 framework for solving this, for getting people to really adopt and finding these like blockers that they cause them not to be bought in or don't activate, like you were talking about earlier?
Well, maybe at the foundation, it's important to remember that the software vendor and the software buyer, right? There's the person who bought your software. You both want the same thing.
Yeah.
You want them to succeed with your software. You want them to get enough value out of it, and you want them to anticipate future value enough so that they keep subscribing. So the first thing to remember is that you're actually on the same side of the table. And unfortunately, most of the time, there's a little bit of tension that exists between the relationship, where instead of it like we're entering into a marriage, it's a vendor client relationship that's transactional. And oftentimes you don't want to feel like you're having to spend an unnecessary amount of time with your customer, because if you do, one, that can add extra friction. And it also adds more cost to you. So even if it's better for keeping the customer by having a CS person on the phone with them every single week, that's all time and energy and resource that you have to dedicate to keeping the customer happy.
Yeah. And they don't want to be on the phone with your CS guy anyway. Right?
No,
so
usually they don't. So first thing first, though, is to realize you're on the same side of the table. And if you do that, then you start thinking through, what does my customer need right now? And unfortunately, one of the things that we usually do is we just say, let's throw a whole bunch of crap at them. Here's your knowledge center. Here's your support hub. Here's your CSM call. Here's your 3-hour training call that we're going to have our professional services team do for you once a week for the next 2 months. And we like just throw all this stuff at them. And unfortunately, most of that stuff is actually not what they need at this exact moment. So the other piece that I think is really important is to break down exactly what the customer needs into much smaller chunks and then focus only on that at that moment. So if you can identify, I know that you need to log in, add your users, and configure your account, I should only tell that one person, and I should make it really clear and obvious and easy for just that one person to do that. And then I need to make that person able to help the next person to get logged in, to set up their profile, and to take the first action they're supposed to.
This sounds incredibly practical. It really does.
Yeah.
It reminds me of, are you a fan of Dieter Rams? You know this guy?
I don't.
Okay.
No.
He had design principles, and his number one principle was less but better. Right, this is the guy that inspired John.
For sure.
It's making me think of that. Instead of brute force, here's all the support crap we could throw at you. What's the least we can do to get you one step further down the chain of adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that concept of less but better, right? The end goal should not be to give them everything they could know or that we hope that they know, but it's what they need to know. And only that, because the shortest path to get them to their first value you can give them, that's what really matters. And unfortunately, I would say the other piece of this is oftentimes the approach that we take is a lot of text or a lot of communication back and forth. And it's like, well, can't you just like give me a 1-minute video? Like most people just want something simple. Like like what's the one, like just tell me what to do and make it easy. And that's the other part that's really funny is we survey a lot of users, because the way our platform works, we can actually personalize what content the user gets based off how they interact with our software. So they'll come in, they'll answer some questions, and it'll deliver exactly what they need, and only that. But one of the funny things that we ask users, what will have the biggest impact on your ability to succeed? And the two most common answers are, tell me exactly what to do. And then the other is, give me the full freedom of choice of exactly what I want to learn. So you end up with what almost sound like two diametrically opposed problems. But for if you, again, think of this as a human problem, the first thing I want is to know what direction I'm supposed to go and then
Hmm.
not feel like I'm being forced to go down that direction. And
Yeah.
so I want to feel like you're leading me and directing me, but I want to feel like at any point I can opt out to branch and go in a different direction. And
Right.
so ultimately that's how adults think, because they want to get to the value. They want to get to the gold at the end of the treasure map as quickly as
Hmm.
possible, rather than getting lost in the jungle and dying from malaria and bites from
Yeah.
mosquitoes. You know?
This is reminding me of, I don't know if this is too detailed, but how users skip onboarding flows. Like nobody likes them. You know, these little,
Right.
like, the first time you get there, you have to click next 50 times and it's showing you all these features. And it's
Yes.
like, that's
Everybody
not
loves the
exactly what I
pop-up
want to
work.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. If you look at your Walk Me and Pendo click through onboarding walkthrough in product, actually, that's one of the things that's really funny is I actually think a lot of SaaS founders take on conventional wisdom and think, what's going to solve all of our problems is if we like add a bunch of walkthrough tours in our product.
Yeah. Then
And it's
they'll know
like,
how it works.
yeah. And it's like, no, because like only 2% of the users are going to actually click through it. And only
Yeah.
2% of the 2% who click through it are even going to read what it says. The rest of them are going to dismiss it. And the people who
Yeah.
actually click through it don't even really consume and understand what they even looked at.
Yeah. While you've been describing this, it's just well, the thing that keeps coming to mind is the big overlap between change management, sales, and product management. There's so much around like, okay, we did the sale with the buyer, but now we have to do the sale with the user. And the same for almost like doing the sale for the one thing they want to do. Reminds me of how every buyer is a single issue buyer. Like what does that user want to do today is really all we have to do. And the rest of it isn't, they're not going to really pay attention potentially.
You're right. And I think the desire to always be selling something new can actually be, it can be counterproductive a little bit, because like there are things like if you can recognize the signs when a customer is ready to take on something more and actually time it right, then it's really meaningful.
Mm-hmm.
But usually a lot of times, like we're just kind of spraying and praying that something is going to stick. Like, let me just throw out all the different things I could do for you and all the things that maybe could be really cool. And maybe they even tell you that one thing, but you're afraid that you can actually execute on it well. So you just try to obfuscate it and you hide it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, that would be cool. But you know what this other thing is? And it's like, well, that's why there's oftentimes that tension in the relationship, because we're always trying to figure out how to get them to the place where we want them to be excited, even if it's not the thing they're actually excited about.
That's such a great point. Well, you've definitely tackled a serious problem. And your first customer was Microsoft. That's how you guys got started. How have you grown since then? I'm sure the way you grew from 1 to 2 customers is not the way you guys are scaling now. So I'd love to hear, like, what were you guys doing back then to grow beyond Microsoft, and then what are you doing today to scale Brainstorm?
Yeah. Well, the good news is the way the Microsoft relationship worked is we could basically build the relationship with Microsoft directly, and Microsoft would fund to have us go in with their customers and support them, and they would pay us. We also found out that there was a lot of desire for the direct customer to also pay for Brainstorm. So one of the things that we did pretty early is we architected it with the customer at the center, which actually we kind of lucked into discovering the fact that when you put the customer at the center, it all of a sudden starts to make a lot more sense, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the big problems that would end up happening, we would see, is like Microsoft would try to send their customers out to like Microsoft Learn and go get certified and go get these things. And it's like, well, that makes a lot of sense for like a really invested IT guy who needs his job to depend on Microsoft. But for the other 40,000 people who work in the organization, they don't care.
They don't want to do that. Yeah.
No, they're not interested in that. And what's worse is there's usually one person in the organization whose entire job it is as a Microsoft customer to go in and support that initiative. And so they have no tool. They have no resource. So one of the things that was really unique that we figured out really early is that we could deputize those people internally and give them the tool set to drive the adoption internally. And that really quickly became a way that we could grow, because Microsoft would pay to bring us in, and then the customer who they brought us in for would pay to keep us around, which was really cool. So we ended up in this world where we could actually have Microsoft as a customer, and then all of their individual customers
good.
also
you got Microsoft to buy your customers.
Exactly.
That's great.
Yeah, it's paid leads, right? Basically, is you have one customer giving you other customers that you can then also sell to. Yeah. So what's great is then we were able to then figure out how to leapfrog from that, because now we have customers who are using us for Microsoft. and we'd have some person in IT whose only job it was to worry about end user enablement within the organization and getting them to use the tools that they bought so that they felt like they weren't wasting their money. And very quickly we found out, man, you know what would be really great is like, why don't y'all have anything for like Adobe or Atlassian or Box? Because you know what,
The
those are
other
other
things
tools
you're
that we
trying
give
to
our
use.
users.
Yeah.
And so what ended up happening is Microsoft would introduce us to their customers, and then their customers had other vendors, and then their customers would introduce us to their vendors. And then we'd get introduced to their vendors, and then those vendors would then introduce us to their customers, who would then introduce us into their other vendors. So it created this really great virtuous cycle for us.
This is
where
really
we
good,
could get
yeah.
introduced to a software vendor who would then pay to bring us in to support their customers, who would then want to pay us to then bring us to their other vendors. So that actually has been a really, really awesome model for us, which is a very, very difficult thing to build. I mean, I think every single software company in the world wishes that they could build some sort of a network effect, right? And I don't know that we have like fully turned on that flywheel, but it's really, really cool just to see how natural it is, where Microsoft brings you into customer A, and then customer A says, why can't you bring me in with this vendor? Who then brings us into that vendor, who then brings us to customer B. So it's really cool to see how that's actually worked.
That's amazing. And, you know, I'm a marketer, right? So I'm doing lots of marketing. I'm always impressed when I meet other founders that do like the exact opposite, just all sales. And it's cool that, you know, you can sort of make either one work depending on kind of who you serve and how they're all connected. But that's super impressive. Are you guys doing marketing now, or is it still all just, you know, hopping from connections and introductions?
So yeah, I would say our strongest channel exists with our relationships. Brainstorm has really, really good people who, I don't know, I constantly just how much our customers like us. You know, I feel like we get a lot of doors open just because we're cool. Like we're nice and we're chill, and we're not really like super hard sales heavy, and we're invested in you being successful. And that as a mindset and as an approach has been really helpful for us. So I would say that a lot of our success has come from existing relationships leading to additional referrals and additional opportunities that way. We do have a really big, strong marketing team though. And from a marketing perspective, we do a little bit. I mean, obviously, we have a very, very small ADA team. So we don't do a lot of like direct outreach to people. I actually host my own podcast where we just do thought leadership. It's called SaaS Therapy. And so we spend some time there. We do a lot of events and go speaking at events. I mean, our website, I think we do an okay job from SEO and AEO job. But yeah, we have a great marketing team that does do some marketing, and we do get leads that way. But I would say our healthiest lead channel has still always been through the pathways and the channels that we've built just by forging hard-won relationships over many years.
That makes a lot of sense, especially given the way you guys scaled. So, you know, given that every time we both blink, or either one of us blink, probably everything in AI seems to have completely changed. Like every week, there's another big breakthrough of some type. Sometimes it's hype, but every now and then there is something really impressive. How is this affecting what you do? Like I do know, for example, it's really changed a lot of SaaS because the model has changed. Now some usage actually costs more, and that changes, what do we want users to do? We don't necessarily want them to burn all the credits if that doesn't get them the outcome, right? So has that changed what you guys do in any way?
It has, but it's been interesting. So, like as an example, one of the things that we do in the Microsoft space initially is we don't just provide all of the internal sales and marketing and training resources that go to an end user to get them bought in, but we tie in with that organization's usage data and graph data around what they're actually doing with the software, and then we're able to report back. We help that user change their behavior. So we're actually doing the same thing right now with Anthropic, funny enough. And so what's cool is we can go in and we can say, here's how many tokens you're spending. Here's how effective those tokens are being if people are actually using that well. There is one of the things that I've noticed is there's a little bit of resistance about the shift in the pricing models in the space though, because like people have grown accustomed. Well, I mean, one, like if you think about pre-SaaS, the way businesses accounted for software was completely different, because you actually managed it as a capital expenditure. And now all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's a completely different type of expense in the way that you're handling it, because I'm not buying an asset, I'm subscribing or leasing an asset. And so it's completely different than the way I used to look at it. And so like that had a really big impact on how the SaaS companies in the world even accounted their revenue. Because pre-SaaS, the concept of ARR and MRR and GRR and all these other acronyms that we have for how we actually account for our revenue was completely different. And
Yeah.
so like that is now starting to shift too, but like it was really hard for people to make that shift initially. I think it will be equally difficult for someone to go over to a fully usage based, token based system,
Credits.
because there's no cap on how much I'm going to spend potentially, and that freaks people out. So
Yeah.
I think there is going to be a lot of pressure to come up with models that are more predictable from a financial perspective.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it means that there's like, unfortunately, AI just costs too dang much to just be like, here's your flat fee, right?
Yeah.
And companies
Yeah.
are losing too much money to take that approach. They have to come up with something
They must
different,
be,
but
because
the
I think the
market's
first,
resistant to it for sure.
absolutely. I'm just thinking about the first time I used like Fable 5, which came out recently. I think I spent $2,000 in a day without realizing, like, oh, okay, I'm going to put a little spend limit on this. Didn't realize that was such a big request.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of sense. Well, as we wrap up, I'm curious, what are you like the most excited about for the future of Brainstorm? Like as you look forward to what you guys can do, the changes in the market right now, where are you the most excited about your business?
Yeah. Well, I think what's really awesome about AI in particular, and I know everybody sometimes gets a little bit tired of talking about AI. For me, where I get excited about it is the potential that it unlocks for people. And unfortunately, but the biggest thing that limits you with AI is your imagination of what you could potentially do with it. And it's sometimes really hard to just envision, like, what could I use this for? In fact, all of the people that I've seen who have changed their behavior in a really dramatic way with AI, most of it's happened because they saw a peer do something really cool and they learned from that peer and they wanted to copy that peer. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that is missing in the market right now that I'm really excited about is we're building a coaching tool to give you to learn who you are and give you recommendations of cool ideas that of what you could do and be able to unlock that more. I think one of the things that gets really exciting in this new world is what we've always been really good at is trying to find the shortest path that will get you from point A to B. And what even more is it makes it easier to find those paths because there's a lot of short paths for different destinations that we're all trying to get to. And so what
Yeah.
gets me really excited for the future is just being able to have better, faster, shorter maps to get a user from where they are today to where they want to be. And that's exciting. And so that for me is really cool. And we are now very squarely focused on being the company that helps AI work at work, right? So it's not just how do we help you use all of your technology, but how do we help you completely and build out something entirely different than what you did before? So that's what gets me really excited. And it's been really fun to see what our team's been coming up with over the months.
I love it. Well, Todd, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Of course.